Good evening. Let me call to order the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Helena for Tuesday, January 9, 2018. Happy New Year. And would the Vice Mayor lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Galbraith.
Here.
Vice Mayor White.
Here.
Councilmember Doring.
Here.
Ellsworth.
Here.
Koberstein.
I'm here. I don't know if my mic is working. My little light's not on. Can you hear me? Okay.
All right. That brings us to public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address us with respect to matters of municipal concern that are not on our agenda tonight, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Does anybody wish to speak at public comment?
Hi, my name is Skip Lane. I live at 18 Redondo Court here in town, and I'm here representing the St. Helena Historical Society. The Historical Society has a long history of appearing before this council and asking for your help in finding a home for our organization and our ever-expanding collection. We have heard recently that the Carnegie Building may be underused currently, and that we would like very much to be considered as a possible space for our organization. I know that the work of the SHAPE Committee is ongoing and that no decision will be made about use of city-owned facilities until their work is completed. But I did want to put a bug in your ear anyway about Historical Society use of the Carnegie. As most of you know, for the past 16 years, we have operated out of a corner of the attic in the library. While we appreciate very much being able to use that space, it long ago became inadequate for our needs. We have no room to either store or exhibit our collection. We have no space for members of the public to do research. We have no space for meetings and no place to put on events. It's very common for cities around this country to convert their Carnegie libraries into history centers as the libraries outgrow the space. Roseville, Lompoc, San Luis Obispo, Petaluma, Healdsburg, Oxnard, Oakland, Livermore, and Washington, D.C. are just some of the places that have converted Carnegie buildings into history centers. St. Helena has a rich and varied history, yet we are the only city in either Napa or Sonoma County that does not have a history center. I hope that you will consider our request, and when the timing is appropriate, I hope you will be willing to open discussions with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hi, my name is Peter Scott. I live at 1905 Birch Street here in St. Helena. Mayor, council members, staff, I want to thank you for your service to our city, as usual. Appreciate that as a resident. I'm here to talk about, to commend the mayor and the recall proponents on coming to an agreement to have a mediation or a meeting, a public forum, if you will, for everyone to be involved in. And particularly I want to mention Judge Scott Snowden for his role in this process. He's invaluable in keeping a neutral position and trying to find a way forward for everybody. I know for myself personally, I was approached by the recall committee. I have to tell you, I was a little reluctant to sign the petition because I had a perception of the folks as being pitchfork-toting, uncompromising, just no growth proponents, and I didn't find that to be the case. I found them to be people much like myself who had issues with our direction and governance, and I'm really glad that we've reached this compromise situation, and I think it'll be a good thing for everyone in town. So I would encourage the public to attend the first meeting, which is on January 22nd from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Native Sons Hall. It'll be an open forum moderated by Judge Snowden. And I think the first topic of conversation is just water, and we'll go forward from there. Again, I see this as a very good forum for everybody. I know the mayor from serving with him on Rotary. I find him to be a perfectly reasonable individual, and he's doing the best for our city. I know he believes in what he's doing, and I commend him for that. I personally, like other members, saw issues like the water rates that affected me personally, issues like direction and commerce in our town, Adams Street, and on, all the things that we're concerned about as a public, and would just like to get a little more public voice in. And I think this will end up being a good thing for all of us, and it'll set the tone for 2018 in a good direction. So thank you to all involved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Belton. I just heard Peter make those comments, and I just have one minor correction to make to that. The announcement that will be going into the St. Helena Star has changed the time of that meeting to start at 6 p.m. and go till 8 or until the public is exhausted their questions, not to exceed 10 o'clock. So I don't know. I haven't had a chance to speak to the mayor about that yet, but that's basically, even if it only goes for 2 hours, we figured that it would be better to start it at 6 and continue to at least 8 and then maybe go longer. So I just wanted to correct that.
Well, thank you. It's a new year. It's impossible to exhaust the mayor in a new year, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
We'll put 6 on the calendar instead of 4. Thank you. Any further public comment?
Sarah Cakebread, 990 Allison Avenue here in St. Helena. After living on the East Coast the last several months and helping with my 90-year-old mother, while also keeping up with the news in St. Helena, I'm here tonight to share some thoughts similar to those reflected in my recent letters to the Star, as I don't want to seem like I'm hiding behind the cover of the paper. In my 25 years in St. Helena, I've seen lots of change and very little change, and much of what I see now I find quite disturbing. In the change column, I see growth in much of Napa Valley. The second home is a new norm in our community, and the many empty storefronts along Main Street. Yet where change really stands out to me in the growing divisiveness amongst our city residents that used to be limited to a bad call on the Little League field. What I don't see changing in St. Helena is its minimal participation in the forward movement happening in the county as we strive to keep the outsiders out. But the most frustrating lack of change I see is the continued inertia I feel that our city government has in taking action because a handful of naysayers with few, if any, solutions of their own are calling the shots. For example, tonight, the city will likely approve up to almost $400,000 to complete a new EIR for the general plan, as we have to start all over following a history of delay and inaction on that plan, which has been languishing for years. I've also watched as a dozen or more qualified developers have submitted proposals to develop Adams Street, and every time they've been turned down because loud voices want nothing to change. And on December 13th, Jesse Duarte wrote in the Star that the environmental review of the Hunter project is resuming, and with it, all the controversy that has dogged the project for more than 6 years. That controversy, like the controversy that dogs Adams Street and more, is caused in large part by a vocal group of St. Helena residents who will do all they can to keep forward movement out of the city. But the thing that really gets me is not only that these voices seem to be winning, they seem to be the cause of government inaction we've experienced for too long. America has a president and a Congress making choices many people don't like. In response, we see protest and outrage, but the reality is America elected them, so they get to make the rules. In St. Helena, we elect city leaders, and when people don't like the choices they make, they also protest. Unlike our federal government, however, our leaders often kick the can down the road so as not to upset any apple cart, and as a result, it seems like nothing significant gets done. I don't mean to paint a bleak picture. And I'm sure my opinions are not going to enhance my popularity in this room or in this town. But I'm frustrated, and I know I'm not alone. I love St. Helena. I want it to be the best it can be. But something has to change, and someone has to make decisions. As a person who tries to put hope first, I'm confident we can change. And from what I hear, our city's new management team and perspective are a great starting place for not only to have hope for the future, but to also see action and progress. And no matter where I am, I look forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right. I'll close public forum, and we'll turn to reports by staff and city council. Let me begin with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief report. The SHAPE Committee will be resuming meetings in 2018 next Wednesday night in this room at 6:30. We anticipate publishing the agenda for that meeting on Thursday of this week. There's a lot of reading material because we've received information on the valuation of our buildings as well as the condition assessment of these facilities. So a lot of reading ahead, but exciting that the committee and its work is moving forward.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Mitz?
I am very happy to announce that our comprehensive annual financial report, our CAF report, is finished. So it will be published and presented on the January 23rd meeting, and I believe the publishing of that meeting is this Thursday, correct? So it will be published this Thursday and available for the public.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to try it once in 2018, right? Ms. Jaffopoulos? Close. Mr. Hausch?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to report on a couple items. One, the Council and Planning Commission directed creation of the design guidelines or initiation of design guidelines is underway. We are doing some internal work with the department and plan to begin the public outreach portion of that project starting in mid to late February, and then with some outreach meetings, some workshops, and some surveys. There's a work plan that was put together and approved by the Planning Commission on our last meeting, so I'd encourage folks to take a look at that. We will do press releases and put some information in the Star to make sure everyone is up to date on those issues, and I'll make sure that the Council and the Commission is made aware of any pending meetings as far in advance as we're able to do so. In addition, I'd like to provide a brief update on the Brinkle Court and Turley Flats projects. There's been some construction that occurred on the site. Demolition of the buildings at Brinkle Court is complete. They're doing some additional prep work and expected to complete all site preparation by March. There's going to be a no work period for 90 days while they address some of the loan and lien requirements for the property, and then construction is anticipated currently to really begin in earnest in June. So just an update on that. All 8 participating families remain qualified for their loans, which is important because there's been a little bit of a delay in making sure that this project moves forward. And they're saying groundbreaking to begin in July of 18 with completion in the fall of winter of 2019. So just an update on that. Similarly, you probably noticed the Turley Flats project on Pope Street. All demolition has completed on that, and they are currently boring for the foundation and pier work. They did some winterization on site to ensure that they could move forward through the winter with construction. There were some cost impacts that they're experiencing, and they're trying to work out the details of that as to how to be able to address them. It's interesting, they're using a modular construction style, and with all of the issues in Houston with the hurricanes and then also the fires, they did have some significant impacts with regards to requests from FEMA for modular units. However, the fact that the city and the county made their funds available to the project was able to, or enabled them to ensure delivery of their modular units and construction on schedule. So that's just an important factor for everyone to know. And you'll be seeing ongoing work on the site. So just to let everybody, make sure everybody's aware of those things.
Okay, good. Ms. Smithies?
I have a few items as well, Mr. Thank you, Mayor. On January 25th at 1 p.m., we are going to be coordinating with the Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation District on having a public outreach meeting on the Napa River and Sulphur Springs creek and river maintenance and flood control. We're going to be soliciting participation from the public, but hopefully residents that are along those segments. Vineyard Valley Clubhouse have offered to allow us to use their facilities. We'll be sending out a flyer, put it on on our city website, and requesting RSVPs so we can get a number for the Vineyard Valley Management. But that's 1 p.m. on January 25th. And the water and taste and odor issues, hopefully we've seen some improvements around the city. We've activated the filtration at the water treatment plant, so we're still getting a couple of calls, but not as many. Many have showed a lot of improvements around the city, so if you're still having significant issues, please contact our office at 968-2658. That's 968-2658. Tomorrow, the County of Napa will be beginning their guardrail replacement between Pope Street and Zinfandel Lane. They're hoping to continue work between tomorrow and next week, pending weather. And the PG&E overhead distribution lines that run across the city from Grayson over the county line will begin tomorrow as well, and that's going to include helicopters. So if you hear some noises and look up and see a helicopter flying low overhead, that's what they're doing. They're tightening their lines. So I believe that is it. One other update is the Cornella Pump Station upgrade. RFP went out soliciting design consultants. That went out last week, so hopefully we can get a consultant on board in a couple of months. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Ms. Koberstein?
Nothing.
Mr. Ellsworth?
I just wanted to mention that I met with the Historical Society before Christmas and talked a little bit about an idea for an interim solution for them, knowing that we have to wait for the SHAPE committee to finish their work. But the suggestion of the Carnegie building as an interim building for 3 to 5 years or something like that, certainly finding some home for the Historical Society. I visited them upstairs in the library, and it's a pretty constrained space. One of the things I didn't really realize was, as well as it would be great to have exhibits and sort of museum stuff, the idea of a research library is tremendous, and the Historical Society has all this data and papers, and it would be a resource for property owners, for winery owners, businesses. So there's this other component to it. It's not just like a visitor center, but a research library that would be a real asset to the community. So I'm in full support of, as soon as we can help the Historical Society find an interim home, I think it would be a great service to the community. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Doran? Mr. White? I just have one item that caught my attention in a grand way, and that is that the Measure A committee, as was reported, approved $5.4 million in Measure A funds coming to the city. That really is a signal achievement. It reflects very well on city management, finance staff, on Tracy Prokofsky, who spent probably a year of her life going back through those records and organizing them and dealing with the comprehensive spreadsheets. The auditor, controller of the county described this as a momentous event. The Measure A committee unanimously approved the release of the $5.4 million. There is still some more Measure A money that will be coming in because the Measure A tax expires June 30, 2018. That money will come to us probably in October of 2018. And while it has the effect of substantially paying down our state revolving fund loan, my understanding is at the end of the day we're still about $1 million short. Is that roughly right? But in any event, it is a signal achievement, and I want to really compliment finance staff, April Mitz, Tracy Prokofsky, and all the others that worked on what was a very difficult, time-consuming project, but it really has now paid off for us in a big way. Thank you very much. All right, consent items. We'll go through the consent calendar, and again, any member of
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, what did I do?
We actually have a staff briefing tonight.
Oh, we have a staff briefing. You're right. Finance Department. My goodness. After all those accolades, you need a staff briefing?
Well, I just wanted to take a little bit of time tonight to introduce the finance staff. They do a lot of work behind the scenes, so we kind of wanted to put names to faces. So I'm going to do a brief introduction and let them also talk a little bit about what they do. We are down one staff member right now, so our utility billing department, so we will be posting a recruitment shortly. And in the interim, we do have a temp filling that position right now. Her name is Allie. She is not here tonight. She's been here for 2 whole days, but she's been great about answering the phones and helping customers. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Mandy Kellogg. She's our Administrative Services Manager. And then we have Stephanie Killingsworth, who is our Accounting Assistant 2. And we have Jennifer Weeks, who is our Accounting Technician. So I'll let each of them give you a brief overview of what they do for the department. And we use other duties as assigned really liberally in my department.
Good evening. So I've been with the city for about 9 years now, and my primary duties are managing the annual audit. I assist with the annual budget, and I've now taken on the new role of grant management as well. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Good evening. I've been here for about 3 years, and I absolutely love this town, and I love my job. My main duties are taking TOT submissions and reconciliation. I also do daily reconciliation for cash and the bank reconciliations to make sure everything's up to par and on the right track. And in the meantime, while we're short-staffed, I'm also assisting with utility billing and hopefully training someone soon.
All right, good.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I've been here about 2 years. I do accounts payable, I process business license, and I also process payroll for the city.
Excellent.
Well, again, thank you for letting us take this time. We just want to introduce the staff, so when you call City Hall, you have names to faces now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief, did you have a report for us? I passed you over. You looked very shy coming into the new year.
You couldn't see me in the back, Mr. Mayor. I'm pretty low back there. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to let everybody know that the drug medication take-back box that we had installed in front of the police department last April, we had a tally for this year of, well, it's not even a full year. For 3/4 of a year, we had 45 pounds of medication turned in, and that's in addition to the medication that was turned in at 2 different countywide drug take-back days, and that was another 44 pounds. So 99 pounds of medication that was turned into the city of St. Helena through the course of a year. Medication didn't go down the drain, didn't end up in a landfill, didn't end up in our river. So I wanted to thank the citizens of St. Helena for dropping that stuff off in our kiosk and the coroner's office for disposing of it for us. And I want to thank the Rotary from St. Helena for donating the funds and buying that box for us. It's worked out really well.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. That, I think now brings us to consent items. Again, any member of the public or council member can pull an item from consent. We'll go through it. 7.1, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving and adopting publicly available pay schedules in accordance with the requirement of California Code of Regulations, Title II, Section 570.5, which includes a revised salary schedule for part-time casual worker classification. 7.2, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Pacific Legacy for Archaeological Collections Management for $86,800 and authorizing a budget transfer from general fund reserves of $40,000 to Fund 235.
I'd like to pull that.
Okay. 7.3, consideration and proposed approval of regular meeting minutes of December 12, 2017. 7.4, is that the one that needs to go over to 9.4? Okay, so 7.4 will be considered under 9.4 due to a computer glitch. It got misplaced here on the,
9.4 that was posted under consent needs to be noted that it's going to be heard under new business. But
Right.
item 7.4 is accurate. It's accurately listed under consent.
Oh, okay. So, 7.4, consideration of a resolution approving out-of-state travel for administrative services Mandy Kellogg to attend the Government Finance Officers Association annual conference in St. Louis. So, at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent items 7.1, 7.3, and 7.4.
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth?
Yes.
Coberstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Oh, I see. That would then take us back to 7.2. Excuse me. And Ms. Mitz, you're the person on this one, but maybe Ms. Salvestron would like to say what her issue is so we can address it.
Suzanne Salvestron, and I'm speaking for the Historical Society. In this specific legacy agreement on page 5, under Section 2, ownership of documents, it says that all the original maps, et cetera, come back to the city of St. Helena. However, they don't mention the artifacts that were found. And in reading through our Historical Society files regarding the artifacts, we had spoken many times with Mary Nealon, the city manager at the time, Luke DeFemoro, the flood project manager, John Holston, the senior archaeologist, the Mishwa Rapo tribe of Alexander Valley, and numerous others, the Water Resources Control Board, Pacific Legacy Cultural Resources Consultant, and an attorney also. And I just want to read a few excerpts from a report of why we're so interested in these and what has been done. I have a report from Robin Orsini, who was meeting with Tricia Westbrook, who was our Historical Society consultant at the time, and this was in 2012, regarding our interest in receiving some of the artifacts for our collection. I'll read now a few short paragraphs from her report to us. Joe and I were given a brief overview of the dig results by two of John's associates. She's speaking of John Holston, the senior archaeologist of Pacific Legacy. This dig was very extensive, perhaps the largest ever in Napa County, with 190,000 artifacts. Many artifacts were found in grave sites. These considered most important have been cataloged. Most artifacts consist of animal bones, including deer bones made into awls and bird bone whistles, seeds and shells, and other things. A few trade beads were also found, along with many, many arrowheads and blades in various stages of completion and chunks of obsidian. I explained to John that the Society is interested in keeping artifacts that have an educational purpose to be used as exhibits and teaching tools. I also wondered why anything needed to be done about providing any special status or home to the artifacts not needed for university research or archiving, since they were owned by the city. It seemed to me that the city would have to request a change in status for the artifacts, and that it was likely that the city would want its own historical society to act as guardians for them. This made sense to him. He said that the current representative of the Mishwa tribe of Wapo in Mendocino County was very interested in having educational kits available to teach school children about local tribes. We agreed that at one time the tribe was in favor of letting the artifacts be cared for in St. Helena by the St. Helena Historical Society. I said that I was sure as the society would want to help create various teaching tools with the help of the tribe. This was just part of her report done in December of 2012. The Historical Society has had ongoing questions to the city regarding the artifacts, but all we were told was that reports were not finished. Now we see money coming forward to finally finish this project, which started in June of 2006, when 4 prehistoric sites were found during the beginning dig of the flood control project.
We just ask that we be given the chance to receive some of the 190,000 artifacts from this find, and also that we might have the opportunity to choose some of the things that we could have. I cannot state how important it is that we retain some portion of this collection of artifacts that tells the story of the Native American culture that was here long before us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment with respect to this item? Okay, let me close public comment. Ms. Metz, are you able to address the artifacts issue?
I am, and we do have John Holson is here tonight, so he is available as well to answer some questions regarding the artifacts. John has been involved in this project since the beginning, so he has a lot more knowledge as far as the history and as far as what meetings had taken place. In talking with John, there are some state and federal guidelines that we do have to stick within the parameters of, and John can definitely come up and correct me with what I'm saying. But because we did receive state and federal money for the excavation of the site, we do have to follow certain state and federal guidelines when it comes to historic preservation of these particular artifacts. And currently, is my understanding that the facilities available do not meet those guidelines. However, John, as part of the overall scope of the project with no additional costs, they are putting together kits, educational kits that can go out into the schools. Additionally, there are some things that can be done, it's my understanding, where we can approach the tribe as well as Sonoma State, and if we want to do a particular exhibit, the Historical Society, they can actually loan the documents out. That is acceptable, but for permanent storage, as of right now, it isn't. So there are still ways that we do have access to the particular artifacts, and I would love for John to come up and make any other further comment deemed necessary.
Yes, Mr. Holston, yeah.
Hello, yeah, I'm John Holson with Pacific Legacy at 900 Modoc Street, Berkeley. And I used to have hair when I started this project. But the St. Helena Historical Society is correct in stating that there were several meetings with staff members, mainly Mary Thielen, who was the city manager at the time. And those meetings included the State Water Resources Board, the Army Corps of Engineers, who provided some of the funding and the permitting for this process. Because of the federal funding and state permitting, there are certain guidelines called the Secretary of the Interior Standards and Guidelines for Museum Collections, which kind of lay out for a museum or curatorial facility certain things which the State Water Resources Board was very interested in, and one of them was like climate control, adequate space, security, and the State Water Resources Board felt that the St. Historical Society, the St. Helena Historical Society at the time, couldn't meet those requirements. We did discuss, kind of some alternatives. With that project, there was quite a bit of public outreach here in the community. We came and talked to the schools. We had a high school come out and excavate with us, and some of the seniors came out as part of a community program. So there was a lot of public outreach, and I'm a big proponent of public outreach. It's tax dollars, et cetera, et cetera. But we did talk about several options, and one is that we curate the majority of the collection at Sonoma State University at the David Frederickson Curatorial Facility. And they've already agreed to accept it, and that was a few years ago. But generally with a collection of this size and importance, they would accept it. We've actually put out a few articles after the fact, after we turned in our report. Myself, I've talked with the city managers and emailed, I think, Tracy. There's been requests for the report, which is a confidential report, but I don't see any reason why the St. Helena Historical Society couldn't get the report. I don't think we've sent it to them yet. So, or we could do a redacted report, but everybody kind of knows where the sites are. They were underwater last year. Anyway, the Wapo tribe was very interested in bringing some of that stuff back to the community in the forms of educational kits. which would include some of the artifacts that were just kind of picked up that don't have a strict provenience or from a controlled sample of our site. So during the mass excavation, there was a lot of stuff that was just exposed that we picked up. We intended to work with them in pulling together what they wanted. Of course, we'd have to ask them to see how they still feel about it, but I've just worked on a project down at Oakville with them, and they're very amenable to the public part of the process. So the other thing is cataloging the collections, which is what the budget is for. A lot of it has to do with writing numbers on artifacts, and at the time, the St. Helena Historical Society, they had some folks that were willing to work, but they used an Excel program, and we have basically more of the manpower to get the thing done in a timely manner and get it curated. This has languished for a while, so I was happy when April called me up and said, okay, what do we need to do to finish off this project? Generally, once a report is in, sometimes things get forgotten, and now I feel it's time to move forward. In conclusion, I'm willing to work with the City Council and the St. Helena Historical Society to kind of bring some of that stuff back to the community, again, dependent on permission from the WAPO. So.
All right. I had just one question, sir. Thank you. Here I am over here polling. I'm wondering if we can make it conditional so that when all of this material, these artifacts go to Sonoma State, that we would have some language or an agreement in advance that at some point when we are able to meet the requirements with respect to the conditions of the curation, that we can get some of that material back to the community, that we can address that in advance rather than sort of taking a chance that will be available to us.
Yeah, I could call them and ask them. I personally don't have a problem with some of the stuff, but in my experience, sometimes things get lost. They're not curated properly. And I think the controlled collection, which is rather large, should be at Sonoma State. Some of the other stuff, I don't really have a problem with, returning it back. But I can call Sonoma and see if they'll allow that. And we just have it written in our curatorial agreement that it could be on loan, whenever the St. Helena Historical Society needs it.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, too? And I agree that maybe some sort of agreement in advance sounds like a good idea. And you said the larger collection, the controlled collection, if the St. Helena Historical Society, as we kind of move into the future, hopefully we get to the point where we can meet the standards. What would be the reasoning that the controlled section would stay with Sonoma State? Just because of the size of it? Is that?
We estimate about 25 boxes of artifacts now, including groundstone with the bowl mortars and stuff like that. The site generated a lot of academic interest. I think I checked the other day and we were cited 132 times on academia.edu. So it was one of the biggest excavations in Napa County. The control collection, to me, it's important that it's in a safe and secure place. I support the Carnegie Library idea. The Gilroy Carnegie Library, from where I'm from, turned into a historical society. It's a great place to go do research.
So if we were ever to get up to a certain standard, would it be more acceptable to have that discussion?
Yes. Yeah, I think that it's a distinct possibility.
And that would be my point,
Yeah.
not to do it now, but when we get to that point, that we'd have that option still available to us, and have that option sort of addressed in advance with Sonoma State and with your organization.
Yeah, I think with the State Water Resources Board was fairly adamant that it go to Sonoma State. A lot of times historical societies kind of come and go, and at least with the curatorial facility at Sonoma, it's going to be there, for as long as Sonoma State's there, I guess. But there's more of a chance of the collections not, getting lost and being taken.
Oh, I
care of.
understand your concern.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Is it appropriate for us to consider some minor modification to this agreement that would deal with cooperation, continued cooperation in the future as far as sharing the artifacts, loaning the artifacts, something that would survive the completion of the cataloging? And
I'm in favor of that, but I don't know that. It sounds like that's doable, right?
I would need to confirm with John, would that be doable to do an amendment to the contract to add that?
Cooperation.
Just
Trying to avoid it, but we have to now lock it in.
I just want to verify that it's within the purview. So it'd be amending the current contract that we have to add those stipulations in that if the city or city historical society had the ability to do the correct
Curation.
that would be part of the contract.
Or
is that something where you'd need to verify with Sonoma State?
I need to, number one, verify that with Sonoma State.
Okay.
And then number two, verify it with the Wapo tribe.
Okay.
And what about the Department of Water Resources?
Oh. Well, the city owns a collection. And I could verify it with them, but the reviewer that was adamant about going to Sonoma State, she's not there now, and I can call them and ask them. But if they come, I can call them and ask them.
I don't want them to call.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you need to call them. I'm just wondering whether
well, gee, I wasn't.
But whether they need to be consulted.
They got their report, I think, about 3 years ago, and they were happy with it, and all that. So there was no issue. They just said, take care of the curation, whatever form that comes about. I think the city has, a large say in it, as well as state water resources.
Okay.
Is this park being funded by federal or state funds?
This particular project is from general fund, so it's not
from
state
general
or federal.
fund. Okay.
City General Fund, yes.
City general fund.
Okay.
I don't know how long these various tasks take, but maybe before we get to task 2, the curation preparation, or task 3, maybe we could just amend the agreement that you would report back at that point, and we would amend the contract if acceptable to those parties to provide for this.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. The process would be the collections, the controlled collection. We've given them temporary numbers, so we'd get numbers from Sonoma State, right numbers on each individual artifact, except for some of the stuff which we do in lots. Clean it, package it. And there's certain standards that we follow for packaging and stuff like that. Then after that's all done, we would kind of go through what I mentioned in our proposal, that we would be selective, mainly with the control stuff, that'll all be, but there's other things that that wouldn't be treated as, they would be bagged in lots or something like that, but not as particular proveniences. Then the last phase is actually turning that over to Sonoma State. And we estimated 25 boxes. So it would probably take us, maybe till July or August to get the collection in order. Did I answer your question?
Is it acceptable that we would, I don't know how you would handle this, Tom, but
Resolution.
so it doesn't fall through the cracks if we pass something this evening, that we check back and...
So there are a few ways to do this. One way is that this could be kicked over to another meeting Another way is that we can take a break and try and consider the best way to do this and not try and draft this on the fly. I don't know, without sitting down with the contracting party, what works or not. I imagine that we could, it sounds as though there might be council interest in amending Exhibit A to the agreement under Task 2 to provide language that says that to the extent feasible and acceptable to, again, this is, drafting in the middle of a council meeting, trying to draft contract language like this is very difficult. But the concept I've heard is that to the extent acceptable to the regional board, Sonoma State, et cetera, that at the Task 2 phase of this agreement's performance, there would be some evaluation done acceptable to the city and to the other agencies to determine whether any or some of the artifacts could be appropriately shifted back to the city for the city's control. But again, that was an inelegant way of trying to summarize it, and I don't think that we can. I think the best way to do this is either to take a break and try and draft something now that makes sense, or to kick this over to a future meeting.
Do we lose anything by kicking it over to for 1 month as a practical matter?
John, does that throw you off?
How many years?
No, I know. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't throw me off at all. I just want to make sure that your needs are taken care of as well as
all right. Well,
the
then,
collections. So.
My suggestion is that we continue the matter. We have a framework of what we would like to see in the contract, and then bring it back in a month. We can't do it in less than a month because we now notice our meetings 2 weeks in advance, basically.
That's fine. I mean, I have to stop at St. Helena Olive Oil, so another trip up in a month.
Terrific. and then hopefully it will be on the consent calendar and taken care of that way in a month.
No problem with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Halberstam. So, we have no public hearings. New business, 9.1. Proposed mission statement and work plan for the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee. Yes.
Can we get the monitors turned on? Can we get the monitors turned on? Monitors? Sorry. Should have given you a heads up on that. Thank you, Mayor Galbraith and City Council and members of the public. Hello, my name is Tobias Barr. I am a project manager with Public Works, and for the last year or so, I've been the staff liaison for what started as the Active Transportation Committee and then merged into the Active Transportation and Sustainability Committee, which was kind of the catalyst for this project of coming up with a mission statement and annual work plan for the committee. So I did have some printouts that I, of course, left right on the printer. So I apologize for that, but we can project this section of the staff report up on the screen for everyone. So just a quick background for those who kind of don't know the history. So the ATC, or the Active Transportation Committee, from my understanding, was kind of formed as a requirement for a lot of these funds that are coming in, state funds for active transportation projects, and it's kind of acts as the working group and means to get public comment on a lot of these projects, which is a requirement. So that's how the committee functioned for a long time, and we also participated with Napa Valley Transportation Authority to create these regional plans for pedestrians and bicycle and things. So it's functioned really well in that respect. And then recently, when it was merged with the Sustainability Committee, which existed on its own for a little while and helped with some various sustainability projects, I think mostly on the planning side of the house, the committee felt strongly that they should come up with a mission statement and try and come up with some annual goals. So that process has been maybe a year in the making. You know, we've been doing other things in the committee as well, and come up with the mission statement presented before you, and then these kind of three main areas of our work plan related to active transportation, environmental sustainability and resource management, and then city council interaction. So with that said, I know there's some members of the committee here tonight, and I'll introduce Jeff Farmer, who's the chair of the committee, who would like to present these individual bullet points to City Council directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Farmer, chair of the ATSC committee. I came into this about 7 months ago, and the mission statement had already been done, and I was fine with it, and we jumped into taking that and distilling them into some of the goals that you see here. And we've kept the spirit of both committees by separating active transportation and sustainability, which is why you see it separated there like that. And so underneath the active transportation, we're looking at the obvious things: bicycling, walking, other than cars, although cars are active too. Public transportation as well is under our purview to figure out how to make it more efficient. I do want to point out a minor success story even right now, and that is that the police department is rewarding children with bicycle helmets. If they see a child wearing a bicycle helmet, they'll give them a gift certificate to Chocolate or that pizza place or something like that, and reward them that way. So we'd like to see that kind of thing continue. Positive rewards are always better than negative, especially with kids, so I kind of like that. So bicycle safety is a big thing. Working with Caltrans on the signalization, a lot of the intersections on 29 and do not recognize, they're not sensitive to bicycles making lefts, and that's a huge problem. At a personal level, I bike around, and I'm always violating the law because I'm not going to wait for a car, especially on a Sunday morning.
We'll strike that from the record.
Okay. And so that's important in general. And also we want to work with the Vine Trail and have that come through St. Helena in the appropriate way with public input. So we see those as the big things with transportation. Sidewalk repair is a huge issue, and I'm not going to go into that. Everybody knows what our sidewalks are like, and but we're going to work with the Public Works Department, and I understand Mr. Mayor and Mr. Vice Mayor are on that committee to make sure our sidewalks are repaired in the right places at the right times, and we're going to assist in that. On the sustainability side, we are looking at a climate action plan that the city of Calistoga did about 3 or 4 years ago to see if there are elements within that plan that make sense for us in St. Helena. And we've literally just gotten a copy of the plan in the last 2 weeks, so we're just starting that effort to see if that makes sense for us. We want to review some past programs. Tom Vince, who's on our committee, I don't think he's here tonight. Tom Vince and Glenn Smith were on the Sustainability Committee, and when it was going, and they were involved with a lot of projects there, they would like to review them and have us review them to see how successful or not they are. And then we want to talk about and see if there are some ways to promote organic gardening within the city by residents utilizing perhaps the community garden that's near Mealy Park to get some knowledge about that, and basically as an educational program to help people garden in safe, sustainable ways. So it's kind of an outreach thing. And then finally, we want you guys to know what we're doing, so on a regular basis. So we just threw in quarterly. I don't know if that's the right amount, but we want to kind of come back to you on a regular basis, quarterly at this point, and tell you what we're doing and get your input. Thank you.
Very good.
Happy to answer any questions.
No?
Okay, thank you.
Should you have a comment? Well, go ahead. You take a seat, yeah.
Oh, is this working? Good. I'm wondering, we recently disbanded our tree committee. And before we did that, when we had our goal-setting session, we had some comments from some people related to environmental sustainability, particularly getting into a program to maintain our tree canopy over some of our stream beds to promote fish and wildlife sustainability. I don't know if that's something you could consider looking at in the future or if you thought it was worth it. In the active transportation piece, I'm a walker, not really a bicycler, and I like nice sidewalks, but I think at some point it would be nice if the city would think of a good connected pathway of ways to walk from one place to another without necessarily having to be on the sidewalk or the street, to start to develop little private easement ways or whatever so that there would be a good walking path system around town.
Okay.
And lastly, thank you for your volunteer service. I appreciate it.
Great, I wrote that down. Thank you. Good suggestion.
I have similar comments. I'll start with thank you for your service to our community. I'm very much appreciative. I was thinking about the point that Mary made with respect to walkability. That was jotted down on my list of thoughts. I think it should actually be more formalized on your bullet point and listed as a bullet point. I think the city is losing opportunities with respect to walkability. We have so many opportunities with wineries, the culinary, historical tours. We have a potential to do a website to show that we have car-free opportunities for people who want to come and visit us or for our own community. So I think walkability in general is something that should be focused on and should be a separate bullet point for the reasons that Mary stated. I think there's an opportunity that's missed for our city in many ways. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we have a regular meeting tomorrow, and we'll bring that up. Thank you.
Any further comments from members of the council in terms of
I'm released.
providing direction?
Yes.
Direction. Okay. Certainly, I endorse my colleagues' comments and have really nothing further to add. I'm very sensitive, though, to your point about the lights not responding to bicycles. This happens to me all the time at the Madrona 29 intersection.
Good.
And the Pope Street intersection.
Yes.
Pope Street and Main Street. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So that would take us to 9.3. 9.2, sorry. This is the canine police issue. Chief will address it.
We good? Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk to you about our police canine program. We've had the program off and on for since about 2001. As dogs have retired, we've gotten additional dogs. We have one canine position here in St. Helena. And in July of 2017, the handler at the time, Officer Peterson, notified me that our dog, Chino, needed to retire for medical reasons. And I asked him to keep the dog on through the end of the calendar year, which he agreed to do. So Chino's last day was December 24th, 2017. And so since then, for the last few weeks, we have not had a canine. But since we have one working canine position, I thought it was imperative that replacing him became my mission. Our previous maintenance training provider for our canines, conducted his training in Concord, California. So the officer had to drive to Concord, which obviously created travel costs and expenses with overtime and related expenses. And in addition to that, I was told that a new dog might cost as much as $10,000 or more. And on top of that, initial handler training, which could be $5,000 or more. And so I began reviewing the program and tried to determine how best to continue the program while at the same time shaving costs and try to reduce that impact. I was discussing this with the city manager in his office one day, and he suggested that I reach out to the Sean M. Walsh Canine Memorial Foundation to see if they could assist us with a grant for the canine position. And Mr. Prestwich had partnered with the program before to get a canine at the city he worked at previously, and worked out well. In addition to reaching out to the Sean M. Walsh Canine Memorial Foundation, I looked for other canine providers. That is the company that would actually provide the dog and also typically provides the maintenance training, which is the monthly update training. I contacted the Napa Sheriff's Department to ask them who they use, since they're local, and they use a company out of Novato called CJ's Canines. And I talked to the supervisor of their canine program, trying to determine whether they were happy with that program and with that provider, and they're extremely happy with the dogs and the training that they're getting, and mentioned that if St. Helena were to use CJ's training, it would make for a more natural working relationship between the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. They would be more comfortable if they knew what to expect from our dogs if they were with us on one of our calls or we were responding to help them on one of theirs. With that information in mind, and because they're a local, or because they work with a local department, I contacted CJ's and asked them for a quote for the purchase of a dog, as well as the handler training and ongoing training, maintenance training. They submitted a bid to me for $8,500 for the dog, and $5,000 for the initial training. Additional maintenance training would be another $500 a month, or $6,000 a year. For comparison, when we bought Chino back in 2011, in 2011 dollars, we paid $10,344 for him, and our training expenses were $8,500 through our previous provider. Just switching to CJ's Canines saves us approximately $5,500 if you compare 2018 dollars to 2011, which you really can't. So it's probably slightly more than that. After some back and forth emails and a phone call with the Canine Memorial Foundation, I submitted a grant proposal to them for the purchase of the dog. We found out at the end of December that we were awarded that proposal, or that grant, in the full amount, $9,222. A little bit about the Sean M. Walsh Canine Memorial Foundation. Sean was a National Guard soldier stationed out of Pittsburgh, California, in the 870th MP Company. His passion and his main goal in life was to be a canine handler in a police department. Unfortunately, he was killed in action in Afghanistan, and his mom, Cheryl, ultimately created this foundation in his honor to help other agencies and other officers that had the same goal and same dream to become a canine handler reach that goal. The foundation is a 503c1 charitable foundation. They make all their money off of donations and fundraisers. All of the employees, and I believe there's 8 of them, work for free. They graciously offered to fund the entire purchase of this dog, which, as I said, after taxes is $9,200. A little bit about working dogs, and I just give you a little background before we talk about Chino and specifics. But working dogs, they assist in searches for missing persons, searches for narcotics, for fleeing suspects, lost articles, such as evidence, weapons, clothing. They protect the handler. They assist the handler in arrests. They assume risks so the officers don't have to, minimizing injuries to the officers or minimizing exposure to injuries. And they provide another level of command and control at a scene. Just the mere presence of a dog tends to calm people down that might otherwise want to fight the police. Chino, in his 6+ years with us, has done all of these things: search for missing people, apprehended dangerous suspects, search for narcotics, trailed fleeing suspects, assisted other agencies that needed help doing these various tasks. And something that gets lost with police dogs, working dogs, is that they're also a bridge to the community, especially children, but the community at large. People love to come up and meet the dog. Everybody seems to love the dog. It's like a firefighter. Everybody loves them. I don't understand it. They want to come up and talk to the officer, and it's a nice icebreaker for the community. Canines, working canines, are a force multiplier anytime they're present. It's not just an officer anymore, it's an officer and a dog is worth more than a second officer. People just don't want to mess around with a dog. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to be doing anything other than sitting there next to the officer, but people know there's a dog there. Now, we were passing around a phrase, and off the top of my head, I can't think of what it was, but it's something about compelled compliance, I think is what we were calling it. Yountville and Calistoga do not have dogs. Calistoga has had in the past. We actually stole their handler, and so they don't have a dog right now, but I know that they're looking at getting one. However, Chino has assisted both of those communities in previous occasions with whatever they had going on. There are some costs associated with the dog in addition to the purchase of the dog. I'm not here to say that this whole thing is free. There's a initial handler training cost that's approximately it's $5,000. That's the quote. We also have to send the officer to that training. It's located in Novato, and we have to put the officer up for that training because of the commitment involved. And so there's a approximately $2,500 cost there so about $7,500 for the initial training. That money is currently sitting in a fund that we have for asset forfeiture money, and so that would not be used out of general fund money. I couldn't think of a better use for asset forfeiture money than a police canine that's used to seize and locate and seize narcotics. There's ongoing training costs. $6,000 annually is the quote from CJ's. That's actually roughly the price we've been paying our previous provider. And there are potential medical bills associated with having a dog for the dog itself, and we have a fund set aside for that in our current fiscal year budget. Both of those items, the training and the medical expenses, are funded out of our COPS grant fund, so they're also not general fund money. There also will be a need for a new patrol car. The current canine car has been in service since 2008. It has over 100,000 miles on it. It's pretty beat down into the ground. We're still using it, but it's worn out. I have a fund set aside in COPS also for that, and if this position is approved tonight, I'll come back to you at a later meeting and talk to you about how to fund a patrol car for the officer. So my point, though, is that to continue this program, there are no additional funds. I'm not requesting additional funds out of the general fund, and going forward, I won't be requesting additional funds to continue the program as it is now. I'm not going to go over. I could give statistics. I'm going to give a few anecdotal ideas of what Chino has done in the past, and I'm just going to use the last 2 years because going back 6 years would be. Every time the officer makes a car stop, he gets out of the car with the dog. The dog gets out of the car. So there's a deployment. They're sniffing the car as they're up there. Every time they do a building search for an alarm call, the dog is with them. I've been on the calls with the officer at night, and he puts the dog on the corner of a building and tells it to sit and basically guard, and then we go and search the rest of the building or the grounds, and that's very comforting for me as the second officer, but just in general terms, we know there's nobody coming up behind us because they can't sneak past the dog, and so we don't have to worry about having a third person watching our backside. So that's very, very useful. Chino's searched for missing people, I don't know how many times in town. Burglaries in progress. He's searched the buildings here in town. The preschool kids have come to visit him at the police department on more than one occasion. Discoveryland Preschool likes to walk over and say hi to the dog. He's been at the elementary schools and doing presentations for the kids. He's and just in the last 2 years, he's been at RLS both years doing baggage sniffs before their 8th grade trip. He hasn't found anything. He has helped other agencies, the Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol most frequently, doing, again, building searches during burglaries, searching for fleeing suspects. He's searched vehicles and found narcotics for those other agencies. And I point that out because helping these other agencies is part of our mutual aid agreement with them, and mutual aid by its very meaning is mutually helping each other, and we have to be able to reciprocate when they help us so many times doing so many things that we're not equipped to do or capable of doing. We like to be able to help them out when we can. So it's nice that he's been able to do that. I think that's pretty much it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I brought the new canine handler. If this is approved, he's already been selected, and I have him here as well if you need to ask questions of him, and I'm at your disposal.
Let me open it up for public comments. There, public comments. Public comment. Why don't you identify the proposed candidate?
Officer Stephen Coltrip is back here. Steve didn't know he was coming to a council meeting tonight. He just got off a 12-hour shift and he has to be back tomorrow at 6 a.m. And so he's been sitting in the back wondering why we weren't first. So,
Thanks for coming.
Any further questions? Thank you.
I just have a comment. Continuing April's presentation, I wonder if you could bring the dog sometime to the council meeting along with the rest of the department and let us meet the dog.
Absolutely, that's the plan. Probably not until after the initial handler training is done. We want to know the dog will obey. But absolutely, I intend to bring the dog forward to meet everybody and be met. I also have a couple of new officers that, when they're done with their training, would like to come say hi to you.
How do you name the dog? Or are we always just going to call it the dog?
I'm not sure. The company that provides the dog usually assigns a name, but this is my first time trying to obtain one. The last 3 dogs that we had, I didn't like their names, but I didn't know. Apparently, we can change the name. Yep. So if the dog comes in named Bob, we can change it. So
could be an interesting community participation.
So now that's an interesting observation, and we actually talked about that as having some sort of a community involvement. Something. We'd have a little oversight on the ultimate name, but at least soliciting for suggestions if we don't like the one that the dog already answers to.
Thank you.
And it was terrific also to identify the grant to get the funding. That's really great. Thank you.
Yeah, the Sean M. Walsh Foundation has supplied money to agencies all over the country. They're local. Cheryl Walsh lives in San Jose, and they have been able to provide funds for dogs on the East Coast and the West Coast, several around here, including the city of Cotati. And so it's a great thing that they're doing. And we're hoping in the future we'll be able to help them out up Valley by hopefully raising some funds for them to continue doing this for other agencies.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further council discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe your microphone's on.
You're right. I was coughing and I turned it off. Is there any further council discussion? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the item.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth?
Yes.
Koberstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay, that takes us to 9.3, and this is the Diet and Batia consulting contract. and if I mispronounced a name, I apologize. Mr. Hausch?
Thank you, Mayor and Council and members of the public. I'll just wait a few minutes while my presentation comes up. Thank you. As identified, the item before the council this evening is consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Dayton Bhatia to complete the St. Helena General Plan Update and Environmental Impact Report for a total dollar amount not to exceed approximately $285,000 or up to approximately $337,000, and then further authorize a budget increase of that dollar amount of the contract. The range in the contract amounts or dollar amounts is due to some optional tasks that staff is asking the council to review and decide on. There's a significant amount of background discussed in the staff report. I'll just touch on some of the high points. In April 2007, the city initiated the general plan update process. In October of 2010, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the general plan and associated environmental impact report. However, this was not adopted at that time, and further analysis and updates were occurred over a number of years. In April 2015 through 2017, numerous study sessions were held with the Planning Commission to address a number of these issues and further discuss them. In March of 2017, the City Council directed staff to modify the general plan to remove a newly proposed land use designation, the low-medium land use designation. And it should be noted the justification for this direction is much broader than was identified in the staff report. Essentially, some of the reasoning behind it was that the new land use designation was not seen as being fully vetted with the community. It was identified as a significant departure from the 2010 plan. There were concerns voiced over consistency with the housing element, and there was some discussion that any new land use designation should be looked at as a comprehensive land use analysis citywide. I apologize for some of the brevity in the report. In the summer of 2017, as staff worked to update and finalize the draft documents, it became clear that the existing EIR was not legally adequate. And so in August, staff recommended and the City Council supported conducting a new EIR for the general plan update. After issuing an RFP for environmental impact consultants, 3 responses were received, and all 3 of the respondents were interviewed by a panel which consisted of Mayor Galbraith, Vice Mayor White, Planning Commission Chair Kistner, and myself. After this review and interview process, planning consultant firm Dayton Bhatia was the unanimous choice to complete the project. Separate from the scope of the proposal in their response, staff requested, or in response to seeing a number of changes in the regional context and state law, some of which are coming down the pipeline, staff asked Dayton Bhatia to prepare a list of optional tasks to ensure successful completion of the process and to meet future needs of the city land use decisions. So the total contract amount without those optional tasks is approximately $285,000. To get into some of those optional tasks, there is some potential need for additional coding. There's a model that's used to identify traffic impacts. It's unclear, staff is uncertain whether the existing coding that was done for that model accurately reflects all of the chosen intersections identified by the consultant. And so we're waiting on more information regarding that intersection data. However, if it's determined that specific coding needs to be done for that, that is a cost of $4,000 that's identified as an optional scope.
Can you just give an example of what coding would consist of? I'm not sure I understand that fully.
I'm not certain that I do either, but it's essentially fleshing out the model. So there's various models that are used for traffic analysis because you're essentially projecting future traffic numbers. And Rajiv Bhatia, one of the principals from the firm, is here, and he can elaborate on this potentially. He's not a traffic engineer either. He's also a planner. But it's essentially you have to model specific intersections for those you have to code specific intersections for those models, I'm sorry. And so that's a cost that's associated with making the model more specific to St. Helena's circumstances. Second, one of the optional tasks is the creation of new thresholds for significance impacts for traffic. So the state, when they adopted Senate Bill 743, created or told cities that they need to change from the current threshold of significance. So we've seen level of service for intersections discussed in environmental analysis, and the state has said that level of service of intersections is no longer going to be an environmental impact. Rather, they are shifting to vehicle miles traveled. So they're less worried about congestion and they're more worried about air quality impacts. So the number of miles traveled to get to a location is becoming the new threshold. Senate Bill 743 was adopted in 2013. However, just as of January, the state has said cities have 2 years to create these thresholds. It requires the input of a traffic consultant, traffic engineer. So staff, knowing that this was coming down the pipeline in 2020, it's a requirement of all of our land use decisions going forward from that point, and to be incorporated in the general plan as the significance threshold. I asked the firm of Dighton & Badia to work with their consulting firm for traffic analysis, Fair & Peers, who are one of the cutting-edge traffic consultants in the state, to create an optional task for what that would take. That's optional task 2, and they've budgeted that out as approximately $18,000. The third optional task is some analysis of an expanded planning area. General plan planning area typically coincides with, or currently coincides with, the city limits. However, state law permits that the city to include land outside its limits that bears a relationship to St. Helena, and this is typically a good planning practice, given that some of these properties that are unincorporated in the county, but they have a direct relationship to things that occur in the city. The city provides numerous services to properties outside the city limits, such as police and fire service. We provide water, as many folks are aware, to numerous properties. Folks use our library, folks use our recreation programs, but they're not necessarily in the city limits. And so it is typical and, in staff's opinion, good planning practice to include analysis of some of these properties. There's a discussion of it in the staff report identifying that the council could direct 2 or 3 focused areas contiguous to the city for inclusion in the planning area. And the ballpark price of that is approximately $30,000 as identified by the consultant. The total contract cost with all 3 of these optional tasks, as mentioned, is about $337,000. Staff is recommending strongly the VMT option be incorporated into this contract, just because this is, for economies of scale, this is the best time to do it. If it's not included, then we will be forced to seek a separate contract for this service and bring it back for the council for additional approval at a later date, but likely within the next 12 months. So unfortunately, the total cost of this is unbudgeted because of the process that we used to get here. It was not incorporated into the budget that was approved by the council. So all of these funds will have to come from the general fund reserves. Staff worked with the finance department to identify where it would leave the general fund reserve net position. If you were to approve the contract without any of the optional services, we'd be remained at a 31% general fund reserve, and that's based on all information available to date. So that's the most current number. April was working on that this afternoon. And if you were to approve it with all optional services, then that would bring us to 30% general fund reserve. So it's important numbers for the council to consider. The staff recommends that the council authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Dighton & Badia to complete the 2035 general plan update and EIR for a total amount not to exceed $284,000 and change. Discuss and consider the alternatives for an amount not to exceed $337,000 approximately, and then the resolution before the council further authorizes the budget increase from pulling the money from the general fund reserves in keeping with whatever contract amount is approved. As mentioned, Rajiv Bhatia is here, principal. We're both available for any questions. And with that,
You want to talk a little bit about the schedule that's here?
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes. Staff.
That would be one of my concerns.
Yes. So staff, in reviewing the three responses, one of obviously cost and schedule were the two primary factors motivating the review, separate from qualifications. And Dighton Bhatia, with their experience level, were able to provide a very aggressive schedule. However, that's one of the things that staff heard consistently through this process is the ability to get this general plan done. And so the schedule currently, we're a little bit behind, and it does not include some of the optional tasks, and possibly Rajiv could come up and speak to some of those, how they may affect the schedule should you choose to authorize any of them. But currently, this schedule, we're a little bit behind, but essentially takes off in December, so we're, a few weeks behind currently, concluding in September with public hearings with the City Council. So a very aggressive schedule. The draft, administrative draft will be prepared in March or April probably at this point, with hearings on the draft general plan and the administrative draft of the EIR proposed for May or June. So very aggressive schedule. There's copies of it available for the public back on the table if no one hasn't picked those up yet. As mentioned, we're getting a little bit later start than anticipated, so I imagine it would slide slightly, but not significantly.
All right. Any other initial questions? Maybe Mr. Bhatia, do you wish to speak just briefly in terms of your view with respect to the options particularly?
Thank you. Good evening, members of the City Council and Mr. Mayor. I really don't have much to add in terms of the overall schedule. If you were to add those tasks, I don't think it'll add that much. I mean, perhaps 3 weeks or so to the overall schedule, as long as we know in advance, so that, for example, as part of this effort, the transportation consultants will be doing actual traffic counts at specific locations. So if we know in advance that we are covering some areas outside the city, then we can decide the location of those counts correctly and properly. So if we do this, it can all happen very seamlessly, as opposed to later on deciding to add some areas and then we may need to redo counts, and then the problem that creates is that some counts were done at a certain time and some others at a different time, and then we have to try to match them. So there are all of these things that happen. So, but not a whole lot in terms of the schedule, yeah.
All right. Let me open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to comment?
Tim Neiman, St. Helena. I have a couple of items to talk about. The first one is the one that we just talked about, some of the optional items. Given that this is in excess of $250,000 that we don't have budgeted, it makes sense to take a really close look at some of those optional items and see if we really need them. The VMT in particular, from what I've read, the guidance is still evolving on how to set those thresholds. We have 2 years yet before that goes into effect. So I'd take a really close look at that. The guidance is evolving. Does it make sense to do it now when that's happening, and it might change? We could still do this a year from now or 18 months from now and still make it in under the 2-year limit. The second thing has to do with the flood maps, which are being updated. The flood maps and the inundation maps. We just saw this past year an unusually high number of extreme weather events around the world. I lived in Houston for 15 years, and Houston basically got completely flooded. It was a 500-year flood or a 1,000-year flood. I don't think they even know, because the storm was so darn big. I lived right below the levee that nearly broke, that they had to let water out to save the levee. FEMA has recognized the issue with these more extreme events from climate change. They're starting to update their flood maps. I just read in New York City, the battle lines are already being drawn between what the science is saying about the flooding and what the politicians want the science to say about the flooding, because it affects the risks of places that they want to develop, insurance, and so on. So my question is, how are we going to incorporate that into the flood maps, given that there's likely going to be an increase in extreme events over the next 20 years? Are we going to use the old backward-looking maps based on history that doesn't really apply anymore? Are we going to use forward-looking assessments that try to incorporate the real risks that people in those areas are likely to be facing? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
That was really great. My name is Bobby Monette. I'm speaking as a citizen. And I just have a couple of questions. I have some questions, and they may or may not be relevant because I don't totally understand the traffic issues, but it has to do with the traffic. And I'm just wondering if I was told that there's a difference between analyzing intersections and analyzing flow of traffic, and you can get much different kinds of outcomes with respect to what the reality of the traffic issue is. And that might be taken care of by this new miles traveled metric. I'm not sure if those two are connected, but if they're not, I'm wondering if there's rather than go forward with just an intersection analysis when they're doing traffic analysis, if they're also going to be looking at flow, if that isn't simply washed out because of the new metric. The other thing is I was wondering if there is any language or any looking at regional growth impact of traffic in St. Helena, and in terms of a cooperative, in terms of growth management in the city and in the unincorporated areas, which would be county determined, and in the other cities in Napa County, because I know that if there's any language about that, looking at those issues, because we had a fire, we had an emergency recently, and the question that's been raised many times is, how would we evacuate the valley if there's too much development here? How would that impact? I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering if there's going to be any language in this approach to look at those things, because I think that's very important. So those were my two questions.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment?
Peter Scott, 1905 Birch Street, St. Helena. I don't know the first thing about how much it takes to do an EIR contract like this, and I know it's a significant task and expense, and of course everybody here is shocked by the amount, but that is what it is. As a citizen and a small business owner, I would ask the question, you did 3 EIR RPFs, and I'm just wondering how this amount came in compared to the other ones. If there's any of this amount that can be done by us or subcontracted to someone else or pulled from this contract to save us a little bit of money, if we've looked at any innovative solutions in that regard to save us, and if we've negotiated with the vendor on this amount. Is this what the amount quote was, and that's what you accept it as? Again, I don't work in your area, but these are things I would ask as a small business owner if I was spending this kind of money. And then I'd ask about what the payment plan is. When is this due? Can we stretch payments out over a period of time to save our budget? And there's a pretty good chance it's probably going to be all $337,000. Right. And I'm just wondering if we have looked at every possible way to trim this down, and not to take anything away from you folks. I know you do a fine job at this. But that's a big chunk of money. Oh, and how does it compare to other general plans of the scope and size of a town like ours? I mean, is that $500,000? Is it $200,000? Where do we stand on that? And have we scraped every dime out of this to save money? Would be my question. And mainly, I'm glad to see the general plan moving forward, as we all are. Won't get into that prolonged process. So we're all happy to see this come to a conclusion, hopefully this year. So, thank you.
Okay. Any further public comment?
Good evening, Ann Navarro. Thank you for your service, as you thank the active transportation folks, your volunteers as well. As one of the general plan update steering committee members, way back in the days of yore, it seems like, whenever that was, and a subsequent reviewer of the general plan, I feel I'm pretty familiar with the history of this whole thing. When the original firm was chosen way back, they were a San Francisco firm that it was indicated that they knew our community pretty well, or certainly could work here well, and understood us. And I don't think that many of us necessarily feel that they did at all. I certainly don't. I think they came in with a sort of different mentality about what St. Helena wanted to be and what our future should be and what we should look like. And it seemed like there was a lot of snapping and pointing, and people kind of looked at that like, wow, I'm not sure that's who we are. So, when I look at Diet and Basha, they were selected in part because they felt like they know the community or would be able to relate to us, as was stated in the staff report. But, when I look at them, they're really big urban projects around transit centers, Honolulu Transit System, San Jose, Alameda, all big transit places with significant growth. And that seems to be one of their specialties, as stated on their website. So I was wondering how it is they will know and understand teeny tiny little St. Helena, and how we can feel comfortable that we'll go forward with a company that does. There'll be significant changes because the regulations over the years have changed dramatically, and they will impact the city and every one of us living in it. I mean, examples are the vehicle miles traveled. That's very, very different in terms of development than the LOS system that's being used now. Can impact it tremendously. I'm sad to see that the parks, we may not be able to use that 5 acres per 1,000 residents to charge developers to help pay for the parks. They can add population without us being able to collect fees to improve the parks or buy more parkland or donate parkland. It looks like the discussion of parking will be replaced with GHG. Which emissions, that's what I thought I read in the staff report, and I don't think a lot of us understand that because parking is certainly an issue on many streets in St. Helena, those particularly with flag lots, and I know the Oak Street people. And then there'll be an expanded area, potentially a change of the ULL, it looked like, and then also these adjacent areas. So we're going to be affected by this general plan. Everybody wants it done, but we want it done. General plan is extremely critical document and defines the future of St. Helena, who we are and how we operate and what we look like. So I would just really make sure that you make sure that the population is involved and that you take a good look at how this is being done, because we have a lesson behind us that we wouldn't want to repeat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Well, let me close public comment, and let me initially turn to staff with respect to the flood map issue that Mr. Neiman raised.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to a few of these issues. Primarily, I'd like to start with the cost and some of the. Basically, this amount was the lowest price proposed of all the responses. One of the other responses, which was from the only firm that has a office in Napa, so one of the only firm that is local, was $100,000 more without the optional tasks and had another year on the timeline. So that was definitely the price, or one of the factors. Another of the responding firms, I think their price was right around the same, but actually it was slightly higher. With regards to payments, when they're going to be made, the payments are done as the work is conducted, so essentially it's monthly invoicing. However, one of the benefits of this contract is that it will all come out of the current year's budget, so as next year's budget, which is only 6 months away, is done, this project will already have been paid for out of the general fund. And so although we'll be making payments into the future throughout the entire timeline of the project, the budget will be taken care of currently in this year's budget. So partially answers your question, I believe. I don't have a comparison number on other cities' general plan EIR costs. Mr. Bhatia could probably speak to that. However, Public Works Director Ahmed Smithies here just identified that the mitigated negative declaration, so not even an EIR, that was done for the Napa County Airport Master Plan was a $300,000 price tag. So the scope of the work is essentially what drives the price. We did look for opportunities to get some cost savings. Speaking to some of the concerns regarding the VMT guidance on the thresholds, the process was actually just released, so I can get you a copy of that. It's one of the state agencies, and it's relatively obscure engineering one, so I don't have the name of it, but that process is identified. And I will say that the consultant came in initially with a different traffic consultant. However, the interviewing panel was so impressed by Fair and Pierce, who was actually working with a different EIR consultant, that we asked Dayton Bhatia to use them to incorporate it into their price, which actually increased the cost. But they were so impressive, not only because of their professionalism and expertise, but also Fair and Pierce is advising the state on how to do this. So they are the cutting edge, preeminent firm currently for this work. And so, and I could let the other two panelists speak to that further if they need to elaborate. But that was a very cognizant decision made to ensure that St. Helena gets the most up-to-date information in keeping with the state guidelines, because you are absolutely correct that those are just released. That is absolutely accurate. I don't have an answer on the flood maps. As you mentioned, it's somewhat of a science versus politics discussion right now at the state and federal level. Unfortunately, the decisions made there drive how we address flooding. I mean, that's just the fact is we respond to state law. We don't set flooding policy at our level, so we're somewhat driven by that. Mr. Bhatia could potentially add any information to that. I don't have much more to say other than we'll do our best. And greenhouse gas impacts climate change is a separate element in the general plan EIR analysis, so there will definitely be significant analysis based on the most recently available science. How that's going to translate into local flooding maps, I can't answer that question right now. The intersection analysis that was raised by Bobby, VMT versus level of service, that's just something that's coming down. I do believe vehicle miles traveled gets away from individual intersection analysis. It's more worried about how many car trips you're driving to your location. While the EIR level analysis does look at regional impacts, the environmental impacts that are analyzed are only specific to the project description, which is the general plan. So we don't have land use decisions on county properties, other city properties, and so while the traffic modeling and those types of things do anticipate the numbers driven by those other projects, we can't mitigate their impacts. So we have to fold them into our analysis and mitigate the St. Helena specific impacts that are associated with all of that combined traffic. When the state first passed SB I think it's 375, I'm sorry, I don't have the reference. In the planning world, we all laugh that what this is going to do is essentially double the work for planning or for traffic consultants, because Public Works still needs to know how well our intersections are functioning with level of service, but now the CEQA analysis needs vehicle miles traveled, and so we're doing both, essentially. And then with regards, I think I kind of already spoke to some of the concerns over what St. Helena wants to be. There are no locally available planning firms, unfortunately, with the exception of one who is significantly over budget and timeline. One of the benefits of being in the position we're in is I do believe that a lot of the work as to what the general plan document is supposed to say was already done, because there's not a lot of proposals to change the general plan. This is essentially just analyzing the impacts of it with an updated EIR to allow that document to be legally defensible and adequate. So that's the entire intent of this project. Mr. Bhatia could speak to some of the more local projects that he's worked on. I know he did some projects in Windsor and some of the other small communities in and around the area. You are absolutely accurate. Park fees are limited by state law. We don't have the ability to require park impact fees beyond certain limits. And there is no proposal to change the urban limit line. The optional scope 3, all that's doing is looking at some of the impacts of land use decisions on the edge of town. No proposal to change any of the boundaries of the community at all. So it's just for to clarify. And then there's no impacts of parking and greenhouse gas elements of this beyond what's being dictated by state law. So hopefully I answered all the questions.
Very good. All right. Any any council discussion? I think it would be helpful if we focused our discussion on the options and what the reaction is to the options of the contract. I might add here that as part of the review committee with the vice mayor and the chair, we spent a lot of time evaluating the proposals, and as Mr. House says, we did cause a change in the subcontractor dealing with traffic. And if I'm right, and the vice chair can correct me, this consultant also has been a major consultant for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and knows the county extremely well. So that was also another reason, at least in my mind, to see whether we could blend this traffic consultant into the contract with the provider that we unanimously selected. So that, at least to structure the conversation at the beginning, my suggestion would be that we focus first on the synchro model. It strikes me that that it has to be done, it has to be done, and it just needs to be an optional cost. Is everybody in agreement with that?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, which is more substantive, which is the VMT EIR thresholds. That's the additional cost of $18,000. We do have a very strong recommendation from the planning department that we go down this road, and
Yeah, and I would echo that Fair and Peers, they were the company that did the Napa County travel behavior study in 2014 for NVTA, and then also they worked with Diet and Batia on the Gateway Corridor Improvement Plan in 2014. So they're very they have a lot of knowledge of the local travel models and things for the county. So I think it'll be very easy for them to incorporate outside impacts to this travel study, or our analysis. And VMT is going to be very how do I want to say this? If we want to be able to compete for some of the MTC grants that are going to be coming for transportation and also for affordable housing projects, that we're going to need to have this basis to be able to compete with MTC's new regulations that are coming down. And that's some of the things that NVTA is working with right now with our MTC and ABAG consultants.
any further comment on VMT EIR thresholds?
I've got a question. So I like the idea that the company's worked on the county level and is familiar with that. Are we at a point where this company, are they just reacting to what we're presenting, or do they have some ability to make recommendations or suggestions towards how we're tying in with county decisions, that sort of thing? I just, as I think about our transportation system, we have these two-lane roads that feed the whole valley, and as we plan both in the city and outside of the city, and I understand what you're saying about we can't do anything about what's done outside, but is this a company that is just responding to what we have on paper, or do they also can they give us some direction?
In my experience, because they've been so involved in the regional transportation modeling that the county's done, they would be able to be relatively well informed on specific questions or policy issues that the city's trying to tackle as to how to deal with some of these regional issues. And I don't know if the vice mayor, as the chair of the NVTA, would like to talk about that further.
Well, yeah, I think they're very capable of doing that, and if that's the direction we want them to go, or the scope that we want them to take a look at, they were definitely the most capable of all the interviewees that we interviewed. And And actually, NVTA next week at our meeting, we're going to be awarding a new contract, and we don't know to whom yet, but for a new travel study that's going to be initiated. And I know that they're one of the proposers for that also.
All right.
I was initially concerned based on the public comment on this, but I do think that this is the right consultant to do the work, and your indication that the guidelines were just released. As far as how much further we get into it, I would like to reserve comments on that. I do want to talk about the process here and the scope of the work, but I don't have a problem including this option at this time.
Okay. What about the expanded planning area? Does anybody have any thoughts with respect to that?
I did about a 180-degree flip on this in the last 24 hours.
Which way were you thinking?
I feel very strongly, and I want to talk about the scope of work of this project. I think we have to get this plan done, and we cannot keep adding new pieces to it that are not necessary. We can do that through the amendment process. And what we really need to do is reward this community with an adopted plan that we can all live with. And, we're still engaging with LAFCO and formulating things. And in the interest of not expanding the scope and extending the time, I'm not in favor of adding that at this time.
Okay. Your comments are completely persuasive with me.
Is that the first time?
It's a new year.
My thoughts are, and I think that the point is here, and I think that you make an excellent point. In the staff report, it says staff finds these optional tasks will likely be required of the city at some point in the near future. And I agree, looking at the expanded planning area in the nearby areas, will help us understand the traffic, will help us understand what's going to be proposed here. So I have been in favor of that. I think Mary makes an excellent point, though, that in terms of getting something done, I'm just wondering if as we move forward, getting it done without that component, if we, with our traffic engineers, we leave those conversations open so that they understand that we will be getting to this soon, but just in a next stage, rather than just saying, hey, it's just this island. It's okay, let's do the island first, but leave the threads out so we can connect. So, but I think
that in terms of traffic, though, whatever areas we might ultimately decide on in option C, they're already generating the traffic. It's already there, and I would probably be on our streets and maybe picked up in the VMT analysis. I think of C as more a policy consideration for us and discussion about under what terms do we want to extend services, and where do we want to go, and surgically where are we going to, and that's a big discussion. And I don't want to slow down getting this plan adopted so that we can go that route now.
May I comment on that, Mr. Mayor?
Of course.
I would take the opposite approach with respect to expanded planning area. I think we found in our negotiations and discussions with LAFCO is that we were not ready to even negotiate with them because we had not even studied the areas where we are serving folks outside of our own boundaries. And so this is a planning tool that enables us to meet with LAFCO and its executive director and be in a better position to at least keep those options open. I understand your point, so I think the critical question is how much more time would we gain if we took this out of the scope of work? I mean, if it's going to add several months or, that's one thing. If it's not going to make a difference one way or another, I think it's fairly critical that we have a good understanding so the next time we go before LAFCO with our continuing municipal service review and sphere of influence review, we are going to be in a much stronger position. I recognize that at the very beginning when we were looking at this, that was a problem for us. And I think it's better planning to go forward with that process unless it affects our timelines considerably. I don't think it will, but I'd like to hear from the consultant on that.
And I would agree with you that, we can't even talk about those other study areas outside of the city limits with LAFCO or the county without having done our due diligence. And so, if there is no significant time difference in the ultimate project, that I would agree with you.
Well, yes, please. Yes, please.
As long as we have a clear direction from you, which those areas are at the get-go, the work can be done fairly smoothly. But if you're going to be deliberating, is it 100 to 150 acres here versus there, and what are the consequences of that, that can really slow down the process. And that's, what Council Member Cobertstein was saying, yeah. So, what I had discussed with Noah was picking up some areas that are contiguous to the city. Maybe they're on either side of, straddling, Highway 29 on either side of the city or something like that. Things you're serving correctly, you're providing water to them. They're contiguous to the city. They're reasonably urban in the sense of, how we consider urban in St. Helena to be. And there is no commitment on your part to be expanding the city boundary, to be encompassing those areas into the future. This is just a way for you to study those areas. We need not have any policies in the general plan pertaining to how the city may expand or not expand. These would just be a part of the planning area discussion, and we would just stop there and not go into the whole notion of how to annex, when the service criteria might be met. Those are the discussions that can take time. But if you tell us 50 acres here and 100 acres down on the south side, and we can fix our map, we know the boundaries we're dealing with, it can be a smooth process here.
Thank you.
Okay.
The basic difficulty I'm having is that we need to specify the area, and the specification of it then could affect how the traffic counts are done, if I'm reading this correctly. And I'm concerned that this might delay us as we move forward. That's my main concern. Does the planning department have a specific 100 or 150 acres in mind?
Well, we've discussed with LAFCO, and Paul is absolutely right. In some of our discussions with them regarding the SOI and I think LOS reports that they provided, we were handicapped, and essentially they wouldn't even take some of our input because there had been no CEQA analysis of it. We identified, I think, 5 areas that the council has seen. It was a draft map. Obviously, that would be much larger of an expansion than what this is discussing. There's a significant amount of commercial development directly adjacent and contiguous to the city limits, to the south of the city and to the north of the city. Staff, in discussing this with the consultant, basically provided the list of properties that we serve water to, and said, this is a starting point for this discussion. We have that information readily available. As Mr. Bhatia identified, we would have to bring that information to the council, and you would have to give clear direction early, so likely in 1 month from now, in order for them to be able to set the parameters on what properties that would be. I'm not sure if the city manager wants to add anything, but basically we would identify the properties that we're serving water to that are urban for St. Helena, as Mr. Bhatia has identified, and then kind of let the council deliberate on where that might be most appropriate.
And if you were to come back within a month and we were to go for option C, would that affect the timeline materially in terms of the traffic counts if the traffic count locations are changed modestly, but changed? That's what I'm understanding, is the very fact that you change them can throw you off because you want all your traffic counts at the same time, roughly.
Mr. Bhatia is shaking his head no.
Shaking his head no.
We could pick up a location.
Why don't you come down?
Although you do have a good voice.
I know it's being recorded as well, yeah. So, as long as we know that it's something under consideration and there are commercial properties to the south, we can just be sure to pick that intersection up if it's one intersection down to the south, And, we're not counting all of the intersections in the city. We're counting 21 of them. So if we know that there are more properties down there, we can just make sure that we are picking the area up correctly.
All right.
And I don't think we should look upon this as either a limiting factor that you could not at a later time, sometime in the future, pursue a greater area, or this somehow forms an area you would expand to. I think this is a planning area. It's just a matter of being evaluated in the EIR, so we'll have all of the information. The mapping, for example, if there were to be a flooding map, we would cover these areas with the flooding map. If there is a biological resources map that's done, these areas will be mapped. So you'll have all of the information with you, so if you're having a conversation with someone, at least you'll know, are there agricultural resources, biotic resources, what are the soils, are they flooded, what's going on in these areas. That's really the purpose of this, yeah.
Okay.
And to add to that, it's important to identify this is for the environmental impact analysis, not for anything in the general plan. So
Right.
just to
Yeah, the maps will be consistent, but we'll not have policies saying annex this area or something like that, yeah.
All right, here's my suggestion to council for this evening, is that we approve the contract with A and B, and that we ask staff to come back in a month with respect to C, and then have a discussion at that point based upon just C.
I'd like to talk about the process generally, and I think it would fold this into it.
All right?
I'm really concerned about maintaining control of this plan and not having it expand in scope and expand in time. And I think what we need to do is front end the council's review so that we don't come in a month or 2 months after the staff and the consultant have been working, that we start by meeting with the staff and consultant and define the scope of the work and exactly what is going to be done. In 2016, our Planning Commission fully vetted the plan that we have, conducted many public hearings, took a lot of public comment, written, oral, actually wrote a recommendation to the City Council that has never made its way here, of just a few limited things that the Planning Commission thought ought to be changed in the plan, with the general goal to keep it as it was so that we could get something adopted and move forward. And that is principally one of the reasons why the low-medium district came out, because it was bringing in a whole new topic at the end, and the public was like, here we go again. It's a couple years later, and now we have something different. And so what I would suggest we do is we front-end the council review of the plan. We have the chair of the Planning Commission come with the recommendations, perhaps Bobby, she was there at the time. And we start by going through that list of recommendations and be in a position to tell the consultant, yes, make that change or don't make that change. And then we limit ourselves to just those things that we must do to comply with law, and possibly this change we're talking about here, so that we're not opening up the scope of work. When I look at task 2 in here, which talks about changes to the plan, it gives me the willies. I see in here again, task 2, general plan refinement update. I see the land use and growth management system, and what do I see again? I see again an analysis of adjusting the medium and high density designations to ensure a better fit with existing residential densities. That's exactly what the Planning Commission looked at with respect to the low-medium and said, it might be a worthwhile idea, but let's save it for an amendment. Let's not do it now. And I think at this kickoff meeting, we could go through the general scope of work here, and the council could give direction of, yes, we want you to do that, or no, we don't.
Isn't this what the objective of this task is? It's set out there that we would meet and sort of confirm these issues, right, before we got further along.
This is like a month or two down the road, I think.
Well, I think it's the timing is more
the timing.
concern is what
Okay.
I'm hearing.
And
I agree.
I also think, doing things like changing our residential zoning now while we're kicking off a housing analysis and a housing strategy, those changes can come later, and they can come in an amendment. And so just from a process perspective, I'd like the kickoff to be a kickoff with the council, the staff, the consultant, and right there say, here's what you're going to do and here's what you're not going to do. So we all know, and the public knows, what's going to be in the plan that's going to be different, and why are we doing it. I think it might also help to follow our practice of maybe having one or two council people, be working with the staff and the consultants so that we're all in the loop and things don't go, into the work program for 2 or 3 months and nobody's really sure what's happening. Because I think it's really imperative that we limit this scope, get this done, in this time frame that's here so that we can actually adopt something this year.
That makes sense, so that we're not going 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, so that we're all moving together towards that goal with, this year of getting it done, so we don't get partially down the road and have to pull back.
Yeah, I would think when we get to public comment, if we have made minimal changes and it's clear why we've made them, it shouldn't take so long to review the plan. I mean, it took 5 months to review the general plan in 2016. And the Planning Commission tried very hard not to wordsmith, not to open the door to too many new changes, but to just make those changes that they felt were essential based on public comment or for other reasons.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment on those comments? I agree with what Mary's saying. I note on page 127 of the staff report, there's a phrase here. It says, with respect to general plan policy changes, the policy direction established is set, it says, and new policy work or strategy analysis will not be needed, except as noted in the scope of work. I'm not entirely sure that the policy has been set yet. I think it has, but I'm not quite sure, and I think we need to confirm that very clearly before we move forward. So I agree with you that this task 2 probably should come earlier in the process so that we're all on the same page. Or whatever one Mary was talking about, I think task. What are you talking about? I thought she said task 2.
I believe it is task 2, general plan refinement update, and it's letter D is I'm sorry.
Well, I think the whole refinement of the general plan should be on the table and discussed as soon as possible, so that we know exactly what we are going to add that isn't there now and why. Things that are required by law, that should be a pretty simple conversation. But if we do it at the start, we know, the public knows, the consultant knows where they're going, and we should be able to stay on track, and there shouldn't be a lot of surprises when the plan actually comes out.
How does that sound, Noah?
So just a couple of comments, and so it will take the consultant some time to just wrap their head around all of the information that we have. So I completely understand the direction, and I think it's 100%. It's excellent direction, and will result in a smoother finished product. At the same time, it takes a little while for the consultant to be able to get into the information. So I think a month that's a pretty short time frame. And then the other thing would be the number of meetings that they put into their budget, how many times they're coming to present and speak and work with us. So I don't know if you have anything to
I agree with both of those. We would love it if we could just actually come at the outset and sit on with you as a group and just go through your punch list. We'd like to come in with our punch list as well, and not in terms of creating new policy, but just as we look through information, we may find inconsistencies between two elements, or some information may not be consistent in our eyes with state law. So we just want to be sure that we don't come to you multiple times, with multiple punch lists. So we just, about a month and a half or so into the process, when you have your punch list already, done, and we'll have ours. And I think let's just have a working session that may take, a couple of hours or whatever, and let's just go through that. We'd love it before we can start writing it down. I mean, if we need to meet a few more times, I would say that's, if you need to allocate one or two more meetings, that may be time better spent, I think, in my mind, to make sure that we're not short on that, at the end, that if we need to meet with you one or two times and then we're having to do a contract amendment. So, in my mind, if you want to take the item number 3 and put it in a contingency or something like that, or a smaller amount, or authorize the city manager if you have to come for a meeting or two, that we don't have to have a delay, that's all I would be concerned about. I mean, a meeting with you, the city council. That we have 2 meetings specified here, and if we end up needing 3 or something like that, we don't want to be having a project delay as a result of that. I just want to be assured of that. Yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking is I could provide the list of the Planning Commission comments that Councilmember Koberstein identified to the consultant. Actually, I have it with me tonight. I can give it to the consultant. They could start to wrap their head around that. And I think 6 weeks would give them enough time to get all the pieces in place, come back, get clear direction with their identified punch list and what the council has identified or staff has taken from the Planning Commission's review and the council's further identified in that amount of time, give them their punch list, so to speak, and then that would set the tone for them to be able to move forward. Maybe come back with a confirmation, okay, here's what we're doing and why, because what we heard. So based on that, I would imagine maybe 2 additional meetings beyond the scope that the current analysis identifies. May not be required. So again, authorize the city manager to make those contract adjustments if it's within a certain project amount or budget amount. May be a way to do it without creating any additional time just because we need a contract amendment or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have a study session in here. It's kind of at the end of task 2. Progress on the plan update will be reported. I mean, if we set out in the beginning what the scope of the work is, this second meeting should be relatively short. If we're sticking to the program and not straying into areas that we've determined we don't want to get into, we may save money and time in the long run. And I think it's essential that we have some members of the Planning Commission here to talk to us about their specific recommendations, because it's not always self-evident what was going on that led to it, but there was a document that was begun to be prepared, and included with it were some very important written comments that came to the Planning Commission that led to those particular recommendations. I think we should all see those as soon as possible and, get the meeting with the Planning Commission when it's most efficient to do it. If it's most efficient to wait for your punch list, we'll do it that way.
Well, in terms of tonight, again, my suggestion is that we approve the contract with A and B, and that staff come back to us with respect to C, and hopefully about the time staff comes back to us with respect to C, we can then look at the schedule and move forward promptly with going through the respective punch lists. And that we also, I think that's probably it for this evening in terms of what we can and should do. At that point, if there's any further contract amendment that needs to be made because of schedule or more meetings or whatever, that also can be considered at that time. But it seems to me essential that we move forward and approve this contract tonight so that our consultant gets going and we not lose time.
Why could we not just approve C with the budget amount to be determined with respect to the scope of the acreage we're going to review? Just approve them all, but obviously condition upon them coming back to us and having the council approve those study areas. I mean, I can already guess where the study areas are. Anybody who's involved and seen all the LAFCO documents, you can tell where it is, so it's not going to be that complicated. We may have some give and take here, but I'd rather just approve the budget amount because I think it's just cleaner that way, and then subject to coming back and council approving these specific areas.
I agree with that. I think that if we have specific comments about the areas, this could be part of this kickoff meeting. Right. Mm-hmm. We could narrow the focus or expand the focus or whatever. But based on the representation that it's not really going to add a lot of time to the timeline to do this task, you convinced me. I flip back.
All right, so the chair at this point would accept a motion to approve the contract with options A, B, and C.
So moved.
City Clerk?
Wait, we need
Second.
a second.
Second.
Vice Mayor White.
Yes.
Councilmember Doreen.
Yes.
Ellsworth.
Yes.
Coverstein.
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Batia, for joining us.
Thank
this
you.
evening. All right, that takes us to our next item, which is Ms. Mitz. This deals with leasing of vehicles.
Great. Thank you. I will just do a brief presentation on the, or a summary of the staff report. So currently the city owns and maintains 30 vehicles that are used by the various city departments. This does not include the large fire apparatuses. The average age of these vehicles is 15 and a half years, so we have a very old aging fleet. 11 of the 30 vehicles are over 20 years old, and 25 of the vehicles are over 10 years old, so they're definitely a little bit older. Over the past few years, purchases of these vehicles have been limited to just being placed the full dollar amount in the operational budget, so we did not have a vehicle replacement equipment fund. We just been basically paying cash for these vehicles. The city is currently using an aged, insufficient fleet.
Let me close
Here,
it.
okay. Okay. And you can guess the only two, well, including Jesse, the two remaining people in the audience are from Enterprise Fleet Lease to answer questions. So again, just to recap, the city does currently own 30 different fleet vehicles. The average age is over 15 years old for these vehicles. 11 of our 30 vehicles are over 20 years old, and then 25 of the vehicles are over 10 years old. Over the last few years, when we've purchased vehicles, we've just included it in the operations budget, so it hasn't been through a vehicle equipment replacement fund. We've just budgeted for the entire dollar amount. Currently, the city is using an aged, insufficient fleet, which in the end is less safe to operate, expensive to maintain and repair, and does emit greater pollution than the newer vehicles that are out there. During the fiscal year 17-18 budget process, City Council did approve a total of 3 vehicles for purchase. One was for the water treatment plant, one was for the wastewater treatment plant, and then the third was for the planning and building department. The vehicles for water and wastewater treatment were outright purchases, and then we were asked to look into the option of lease for the vehicle for the planning department. What we're looking at right now is to ask to replace 2 of these vehicles. The first one is for the water treatment plant. Currently, the truck they're using is from 1999, so it is 18 years old and it has seen better days. And then the vehicle for the building and planning department is from 2002. It is 15 years old, and going back to vehicle emissions, it no longer passes smog. Therefore, we are unable to drive the vehicle because we cannot pass smog, so they're currently using a loaner vehicle from the Public Works Department.
You're not going to the right shop.
I know. We only go to authorized dealers. Thank you very much. So following the approval of the fiscal year 17-18 budget, staff did contact Enterprise Fleet Management. As stated earlier, we do have the representatives, Christy and Brad, here in the audience. And recently, they signed a contract with the City of Calistoga for fleet services. So how we found out about Enterprise, their fleet services, Calistoga's finance director, admin services director, contacted me and said, hey, we've contacted them, so therefore I contacted them as well just to find out a little bit about the program. So under their government fleet management programs, cities can contract with Enterprise and are eligible to lease vehicles, which may include fleet management and support, as well as maintenance services, insurance, etc. The terminology for a lease in the government world, it's not the same terminology as the typical lease that you would find if you're a private citizen going to do a lease. The terminology for the government financing world, the term lease is we're basically purchasing the vehicle, but we're doing payment plans for it, similar to if you went and purchased a car and did a car loan. So at this time, after meeting with Enterprise, staff is recommending that the council consider a master lease agreement with Enterprise for the replacement of 2 vehicles. They have given us, and it is included in the staff report, their recommendations based on what a typical fleet would be, replacements, and that's replacing almost all of our vehicles in the first year, which we are obviously not going to be able to do. But what we want to do is take the same approach that Calistoga did, is start out with a small number, see if actually the lease program would work better for our city. If we do lease the vehicles, the overall cost between the purchase and the interest rate overall over the long haul is a little bit more expensive, but it does free up cash flow for our general fund or water fund and our wastewater funds, as well as overall the long-term maintenance. The maintenance costs would actually be cheaper if we follow the lease plan. So while we do have other vehicles that are eligible for this program, we do want to just start out with 2 vehicles. Additionally, with replacing those 2 vehicles, what we would like to do is have the City Council approve. It's a vehicle maintenance program, and the cost for the vehicle maintenance program, it correlates with the overall cost of the car. So we're looking at 2 vehicle maintenance programs for the 2 vehicles that we're replacing. And what that is, it's a monthly service charge. What it allows our staff to do is take the vehicles to local body shops that are already pre-approved. They drop off the vehicle. There's certain maintenance costs that are already included in the cost, so we don't have any additional out-of-pocket expenses, such as oil change, tire rotation, balancing.
So that wouldn't be a body shop. That would be an automobile service.
It would be an automobile service. Currently, we use 2. We use Zumwalt, and then also we have a local. And in talking to Enterprise, it sounds like the local wouldn't have any problems being an approved vendor. In addition to the cost to purchase the 2 vehicles and doing a monthly the maintenance cost on it, we do want to enroll the rest of our vehicles, so the remaining 28 vehicles, into a program. Right now, we don't actively manage our fleet, so there is no database where I can pull it up where our fleet crews, our public works crews, where they can go in and say, how much money have we spent in repairs on this vehicle? We do not have an avenue to do it. Through Enterprise, their program that they have, we can do it at $6 a month per vehicle. So for the remaining 28 vehicles in our fleet, it's an overall cost of about $2,000 a year. So for the remainder of 2018 budget year, it would be about $1,000. I am not asking for a budget increase for that because I feel that we can absorb that in our current budget right now. We can find the $1,000 for it. But what that will do is that will, every time a repair is done on a vehicle, it's taken, there's a card that's registered with that particular vehicle. All the repairs and the expenses for those repairs are tracked. So myself, Erica, her staff, we can literally pull up reports and actively manage our fleet to see exactly how much these aging vehicles are costing us. And we feel like that's a very valuable tool for $6 a month per vehicle to allow us to do this. So for tonight, we are seeking approval to be able to lease 2 vehicles as well as sign up for this maintenance tracking program. And I'm here to answer any questions, as well as Brad and Christy, if you have any specific questions on their program.
Any questions from council? My only question is impertinent, which is the average age of our fleet younger or older than Calistoga's? But you don't need to answer that one.
Their staff report was in December, and we can find that out.
I think it's a terrific program, and I would hope that it proves to be productive and that all of our vehicles can go on this program in fairly short order. It seems to make a lot of sense, and I seem to think that the initiative for this may have come from Councilmember Koberstein, and certainly a very good thought to go down this road, and I appreciate it.
You mean when I told Noah he had to lease the car? Or suggested?
So,
I just have one question. We did get a comment from some citizens about making an effort to start to lease electric cars. And as I read this, it is a master lease agreement, and then you write, there's a sort of a separate lease for each vehicle that you bring in. And so presumably, I don't know if Enterprise offers electric cars or hybrids, but if that became part of their inventory, there seems to be the possibility in here for us to acquire those vehicles as opposed to gas-powered. Is that right?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, staff. It's 100% correct. We are not bound to any manufacturer, so anything that can be ordered, with the exception of Honda, we can get into that nitty-gritty details later, but electric vehicles, yes, we have clients that do electric as well. I know we had talked with April about that in our meetings. Right now, the city doesn't have the complete infrastructure for that yet, it seems, but when that time comes, we can definitely get electric vehicles. And you are correct about the master equity lease agreement. It is a boilerplate agreement that is signed upon commencement of this partnership, and it's a one-time thing only. Each lease from here on out is its own separate contract.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
While you're there at the podium, can you talk a little bit about this card program? I'm particularly concerned.
Sure.
I don't know anything about your program, but the security and the use of the card, how is that managed and monitored?
Yeah. So actually, the card is built into a mobile application, so there's no card someone gets. There's no monetary value. It's not a credit card or anything. It just goes to show the mechanic that are on our programs, because there's no enterprise shops. It would be local shops here in St. Helena, where it just lets the mechanic know they have to call our ASE certified technicians at our corporate headquarters to go through the fixes. And the $6 not only pays to help manage all that fleet, but it helps to have us negotiate what should be better pricing and more costly or more cost-effective ways of fixing that vehicle, make sure the right things are done in the correct amount of time, and get your city workers back on the road in their vehicles.
And just to also address the security concerns for that, for the mobile app, the particular vendors that they use, it is tied to the VIN for that car. So if somebody did presumably try to bring in their own car and get it fixed, it would be declined because the VINs wouldn't match.
It has to match in our system.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's fantastic, and thank you very much. This seems like a way that we can create a system, an ongoing system. And I think the electric thing, I'd gotten a note about that too, so that's great to hear too. So I think this is fantastic.
Of course, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
very much, everyone.
At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the item, 9.4.
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Perfect.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Coverstein?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
That takes us to our final item. And based upon conversation with the city clerk, she would like me to go through these sort of committee by committee in the order that are on her spreadsheet so that she can take appropriate notes. So we'll start with the active. There's no public comment. There's no public left. So don't worry about that.
Even Jesse's gone.
We'll start with the Active Transportation / Sustainability Committee. Mr. Ellsworth is the liaison. Are you willing to continue as the liaison?
I am.
All right. That has the approval of the council.
Yes.
All right. I can be contradicted if I get this wrong, okay? With respect to the Board of Library Trustees, I've been the liaison, and I would enjoy continuing in that capacity. Is everybody in agreement with that?
That's fine with me.
All right. With respect to Parks and Rec, Council Member White is the liaison. Do you wish to continue with respect to that? Everybody in agreement?
Yep.
Okay. With respect to the Monrovia, Moravia is a country, Monrovia is some case name. Monrovia, I've been doing that, and I think Mr. Doring has been the second person there, and I would suggest we continue that if Mr. Doring...
Fine with me, yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
St. Helena Sewer District Number 1. That's all of us. So
Have we had a meeting?
we've never, since I've been mayor, there's been no meeting, as far as I can remember.
As needed.
ABAG,
Yes.
who is that here?
It's me.
Is that you?
Should be.
Okay.
I've got it highlighted for you, Mr. Mayor.
Where, you do have it highlighted?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm looking at
Look at the
Executive Board, General Assembly.
General Assembly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, very good.
General
Okay.
Assembly. I'm sorry.
And
yeah.
the alternate would be the Vice Mayor White. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Continue on.
Okay.
one below it. So we
There
have
you
to
see
get
it.
together.
Napa Valley Tourism Corporation, which is the St. Helena Tourism Improvement District. It's been the vice mayor. Are you willing to continue on with respect to that?
Sure.
League of California Cities, that's all of us. Napa County City Selection Committee, that's been me with Mr. Doring as the alternate. Is that acceptable? That has
What is that?
that has the briefest possible meetings. There was a meeting yesterday. I think it took about 5 minutes. But the idea behind that is to select city electeds to other bodies where collectively Napa County might have one or two delegates. So then you have to decide who it is from which city is going to be. And mostly that proceeds according to some formula or another. That's why the meetings are so brief.
If you don't go, can I be the mayor for the day? Because I'm not sure. It says mayor, only mayors. I'm not. Is it permissible for a
You would be
even to have a delegate or a substitute? It is.
alternate. Yes.
Yes. And by the way, I learned today that Gladys Coyle has retired from Napa County.
I think there is a question, actually, as to whether anyone other than the vice mayor could serve as your alternate, because the government code does say that for the city selection committee, the mayor has to be the person serving on that. So I could look into that, but I think out of an abundance of caution, I would recommend that you,
all right,
in the absence of
How many
that.
times have you gone? None.
None.
Perfect.
Okay, so
I just want to make sure I have room for some executive time, you know.
okay. So based on that, we're going to switch to the vice mayor from Mr. Doring. Okay.
So you could take the flood control.
No, I've got, so on the flood control, it's me and the vice mayor as the alternate. By the way, the meetings of the Napa County City Selection Committee are always scheduled to precede a flood control meeting, so that they're at 1 o'clock, and the flood control meetings are at 1:30. The flood control meets once a month. The City Selection Committee meets, if we're lucky, 3 times a year. So this next one, Napa County Gang and Youth Violence Commission, Mr. Doring has been on it, but is it meeting?
It has not met in probably over 2 years, so I don't know. I think it's defunct, frankly.
I actually reached out to the district attorney's office, and I haven't gotten a call back yet because I want to know if it's been disbanded.
I mean, we have a new district attorney. There may be a completely different regime and program in place.
I suggest we leave Mr. Doring there.
Oh, yeah.
In case it hasn't been disbanded.
And I'll report back.
That's fine.
Nicolog is all of us. LAFCO, you expired out.
Yeah.
That should be eliminated.
And
So that's,
yeah,
Will we have another person at some point on LAFCO?
yeah, it goes again according to rotation, and my memory is that the Up Valley member at this point is Yountville. I think Calistoga declined in favor
That's
of
right.
It'll
Yountville.
probably be 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
We'll be on it.
Next one, NVTA. It's been me and the vice mayor with Mr. Doring as the alternate, and Mr. Doring has gone in my place on occasion.
In mine.
Happy to do so.
Okay.
To continue, yes.
Next one is the WIC, and that's Mr. Ellsworth with Ms. Koberstein being the alternate. Are you still up for that one?
Yep.
And then the final one is the Upper Valley Waste Management Board, and that's Ms. Koberstein with Mr. Ellsworth as the alternate. So everybody agreeable with that?
Yep.
And how often does that one meet?
Every month.
Every month. And if something significant happens, could you just make a point in terms of council comments to inform us?
Well, let's see. I've tried to tell you about sharps. The only thing
We can't do it now.
No,
But
when we get one at the next meeting,
Right.
or if something,
Well,
or
actually, yeah, just a report.
just an update at the next meeting, or whenever something really significant happens. Okay.
so you don't want to hear now.
I
No.
do.
it's not. It's not agendized. I don't
Not
think it's
agendized
probably
now. Okay, Are you satisfied, Ms. Clerk?
Thank you very much.
And there's a little cleanup. There's a little cleanup work in terms of some of the old language, I shouldn't say old, but old office holders, whatever. You saw those, right? Okay. Cleanup.
Okay.
This is a list from 2017.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.